If you're familiar with and use an Elgato Streamdeck for productive tasks for virtual meetings or live streams or any other function that the Streamdeck can provide, then you may also be frustrated sometimes with either the fixed angle with the Mark II's base or even with the variable angle of the Mark I, or the fact that if placed on your desk, the Streamdeck will often move when you try to push the buttons. It's a powerful tool, but I find its lack of mountability and stability a bit lacking. So I wanted to show you my semi-custom Streamdeck mount that I pieced together from different parts and made a few modifications to make a Streamdeck mount that gets the Streamdeck off of my desk, makes it more rigid and immovable when pushing the buttons, and allows me full articulation and angling pretty much in any direction, and therefore works well in my home office here for turning on and off my lights or muting any of my USB mics for my virtual meetings. And it's fairly simple, but consists of a particular smartphone holder with some optional modifications and a cheap 11-inch friction arm with a clamp. And this mount is mobile so that when I take it out and run live events, I have more mounting options there as well. Plus, if it's not obvious yet, for me, having a Streamdeck on my desk is just not ergonomically efficient. If it was sitting on my desk, it was just always in the way. I was always having to move it around and having to reach over something else to get to the Streamdeck, and I just hate how inefficient that is. So I wanted some other way to mount it to where it was up, out of the way, but always accessible from pretty much anywhere here on my desk. There aren't a lot of options out there for mounting the Streamdeck. It seems like they just really want you to use that included stand, and it would be a lot easier if Elgato would just install a standard quarter 20 bolt mount on the back, which is a standard mount on any camera and lots of other audio, video, and lighting equipment. But Elgato hasn't added that to the Streamdeck, so you have to get creative if you want to use, again, anything other than the included stand. I did find a lot of Streamdeck mounts on Etsy that are 3D printed, and some of those look great, but after the cost of the mount, the tax, shipping, it was just more than I wanted to pay. Plus, some of those mounts still require an additional friction arm to attach the Streamdeck mount to, or you have to mount them to your desk and they're less mobile. So I thought, what about smartphone holders and clamps? All I really needed was for something to grip the Streamdeck and hold it firmly, either from both sides or from the top and bottom, kind of like most smartphone holders already do. And most smartphone holders these days also include a standard quarter 20 mount somewhere on it, or sometimes in 2 locations, which means I can then use any small articulating arm or even a mini tripod to put my Streamdeck pretty much anywhere I wanted. So with the articulating arm option, they usually come with the clamp, so you would attach that clamp to the articulating arm, mount a smartphone holder large enough for the Streamdeck to the end of the friction arm, install your Streamdeck, and then clamp the friction arm onto anything around your desk. The problem is the Streamdeck is quite a bit thicker than most smartphones, and therefore most smartphone holders are only meant to hold a thin item. They won't hold items that are very deep or thick. I had a couple of smartphone holders in my drawer, but as you can see here with my iPhone 13 mini for comparison, this smartphone holder grips my phone just fine, but it's not deep enough to grip the Streamdeck. I'm not really sure of the brand of this particular smartphone holder, and here's another one from Ulanzi that came with a tripod I bought, but it's also not deep enough. And I even tried iPad or tablet holders, but those were usually too large most of the time. But I actually found another smartphone holder way in the back of my drawer that I wasn't using that is also from Ulanzi. This is a different model, and I'm not sure, I think this particular one came with a tripod as well, but luckily they still sell a newer version of this model on its own, and it's the ST02S. And as you can see here, it is actually deeper than any of my other smartphone holders, and it's deep enough to kind of get that C-shaped grip on the 15-button Streamdeck. It reaches fully over, out, and in front of both the top and the bottom of the Streamdeck, so when you tighten it down, this clamp has a nice grip and the Streamdeck just isn't going anywhere. And there's plenty of room for the USB cable in the back to not be in the way or pinched. So for basically free, I'd found a mount in my drawer, and I also already had an 11-inch mini friction arm, so I could have been mostly done, but this Ulanzi ST02S mount only has a quarter 20 mount on what's kind of the bottom of the clamp, and that works just fine. I can still mount the clamp on my friction arm, attach the friction arm to something on my desk, and mount the Streamdeck, But it isn't ideal in my setup here in my desk because it means the friction arm would either sit below or above the entire setup, just further increasing the amount of vertical space it needed in my setup. And I really wanted to minimize how much vertical space it required, so I could just mount my Stream Deck right here under my speakers. You can see it from this view. I've got it mounted. Let me zoom in right there. Right here under my speakers. And other than this monitor being right here, there's nothing else on my desk. So I really wanted a 1/4-20 mount on the back so that the friction arm could connect behind the mount like this and not have to stick up above or down below it, and just kind of be more compact and efficient. So I dug around in my drawer again and I found a spare large 1/4-20 coupler, and I took to the garage to get these two things connected somehow to give me a 1/4-20 mount on the back. I grabbed some JB Weld, a cold weld epoxy meant for metals, and a file because I needed to rough up the mount and the washer and grind off some of the paint so that the bare metal of both objects was exposed to provide a better surface for the JB Weld to bond to. So just some rough scratching with the file on both parts, mix up the JB Weld, place the washer, clamp them together, clean up the excess, and wait. And that worked very well. The large 1/4-20 coupler is mounted exactly where I wanted it, and it's pretty much bonded permanently to the Ulanzi phone mount at this point. And now I have a more versatile mount that lets me put my Stream Deck exactly where I want it and takes up less vertical space here at my desk, and still allows me full access to my desktop. And bonus, the newer version of the ST02S has an additional cold shoe mount on the top, so you can use that to mount other stuff if you wanted to, like maybe mount another Stream Deck on top, or if you mounted it upside down, you can mount something else on the bottom with that cold shoe mount. And with these small friction arms, they usually come with a clamp, and they need to clamp to something round usually is best. So I took some 1/2-inch steel pipe from Home Depot and a floor flange, and I mounted this upside down under the lip of this shelf on my desk. I did have to take an angle grinder and cut off the edges of the round floor flange to make it squared off and make it fit where it needed to on my desk. Here you can see the now squared off pipe flange and the small 6-inch steel pipe. And right next to that pipe, I mounted the friction arm, extended it out to the right, and mounted the Ulanzi smartphone holder and then my Stream Deck. And I have a USB hub mounted very close on that side of my desk as well, so I can just plug the Stream Deck in there and not run a cable across my desk to my laptop. And here you can see the whole setup. But since these style clamps usually want to mount to something round, if you don't have any round pipe or aren't very handy, you could get a C-style clamp that will mount to a more squared off surface like the edge of your desk or the edge of a shelf like I have here on my desk, and then use a friction arm and the Ulanzi smartphone holder to have basically the same setup that mounts to something flat versus a clamp that wants to mount to something round. And of course, since this utilizes a smartphone mount, that means I can still use my setup to mount something other than a Stream Deck. So I can still use this to mount a smartphone to either have a conference call or control my lights, or maybe just get it up off the desk to charge it, or even use the Stream Deck mobile app. But I'm not limited to using just a Stream Deck as I would be if I'd gotten a 3D printed mount. So I feel my option here is just a bit more versatile. I'll leave some links down below to both this particular Ulanzi smartphone holder as well as some cheap articulating arms and clamps. You can get this project done for about $25, and that would include both the clamp and the friction arm. And that's it. I just thought my solution for a Stream Deck mount was better than a lot of the other options out there, and I did it for less money, and I'm very happy with it. It's sturdy and it lets me put the Stream Deck where I want. So until next time.